Chris, this is episode 10 as we transition from training you, a ThinkSheet user and strategic partner, how the scoring process works, to actual use. As a dynamic causal chain symbolized by a butterfly effect icon. But here are your primary sectors, industries, and stocks.
Bill, I see you added NextEra into energy. They're one of the largest market caps in renewables, and it's a perfect contrast to Exxon and Aramco. I see you have ASML in the semiconductor for the focus stocks, with their machines costing $200 million. It's a great ad to have in there.
Another objective of this video is to show our audiences the gold mine of assets ThinkSheet has and how we leverage them in our expertise to help you develop your pilot with the least amount of time invested on your part and maximize the value of ThinkSheet over time, particularly a 200 plus model library that enables you to compare the historical markets, models, and patterns most similar to the current ones. You can use them for multiple scenarios, such as base case, best case, and worst case, because the models were created in all types of market environments. Wall Street strategists have encyclopedic memories of the various market environments and emphasize them in meetings, television, interviews, podcasts, and conferences. However, their models are purely quantitative and correlated. ThinkSheet models, by contrast, are causative and explain the why on one pages for fast cognition. Conventional historical models do not include qualitative drivers like COVID, Xi Jinping, Ukraine, and deglobalization.
Now, that's going to be very helpful being able to reference those historical models, because potentially we could even overlay them with the current model and see the difference in the changes from then to now.
These are the elements for the macro quantitative analysis for 30 plus scenarios developed by buy-side analysts before and after 9/11. Rigorously structuring and defining your model framework is critical for your best forecast. We will lead because we have so many qualitative metrics, definitions, and user judgments in the library tested by our users and co-developers. However, as you keep saying, there's a lot of overlap among the qualitative factors. So let's start with the U.S.-China risk. As you know, a couple of days ago, Russia was hit with drone attacks on their airports, which almost everybody assumes was generated by Ukraine. As the Council of Foreign Relations said, is industrial policy making a comeback? Yes, it is. And Biden's Americans First economic policy threatens a rift with Europe. However, we believe that the Europeans and the Americans can work it out because they are friendly rivals as opposed to the U.S. and China. Okay, so Chris, here you can see the criteria next to your judgments. So when you're making the judgments, you can see the criteria increasing the probability that your judgments will be correct. And also you can see the context and the offsets. However, we have one to potentially add to change the criteria because the industrial policy has become such a big deal, and it's very much a part of the interrelationships between the U.S., China, and the EU. Huge development yesterday where the Netherlands agreed to the curbs on the Chinese tech exports and the deal with the U.S. for the $200 million ASML machines. All right.
So based on that newest piece of information, I would take U.S. and China risk away from the U.S. because that is a net positive for the United States. And it's shocking lately, the development with Apple moving out of China and the speed in which they plan to do so, even at the cost for the bottom line to produce the iPhone. It's going to be pretty incredible to see the change and the bottom line with Apple, how fast and efficient they can move out of China. And it really is a surprising rate of change in which this is happening. Big move out of China, I would say so, is their zero COVID policy. I think Apple's the tip of the iceberg, and I think there's going to be a lot of companies moving out of China. So that's why you see this dramatic change in tone to start easing those zero COVID policies.
Stephen Engel, who's the lead China analyst for Bloomberg and has been covering them for decades, was incredulous last night at the change in the policy, but more importantly, the narrative. Basically, in a couple of days, that only Xi Jinping could implement, that only Xi Jinping could make the decision to do and to have implemented. And a perfect example of the butterfly effect. Again, as my daughter, I'll call her back. And of course, the EU and to a lesser extent, China have a permanent energy problem. Just saw this yesterday. Elon Musk and Tesla are having major problems in the Gigafactory in Germany. And this headline tells it all, that the Gigafactory is in total chaos due to staff shortages because Tesla is recruiting people, but paying them about a fifth less than the other car makers in Germany. And also, the Germans are not so positive about and Elon Musk's reputation is not as positive in Germany. So here's the sub-risk criteria: supply chains and tech, and here's the old model. It's this combination that is really the driver. So you've got COVID, which leads to a change, but you've got the semiconductors, which are to the advantage of the US, but the batteries to the advantage of China. And then you've got energy. So all those things combine. So all those things combine. And here are the two big factors. You need the advanced chips for artificial intelligence, which seems to be driving everything in the world today. And you need the batteries for electric vehicles. So it's like wargaming, but both sides are resourceful. So you have to take into account what their comeback is going to be when you take any particular. So the U.S. has to be very aware of what China can do in retaliation for whatever it does.
So Bill, there's also a huge overlap with electric vehicles and AI because of the self-driving. And with all the promises automakers are making to the government and to its customers, saying by 2025 and 2030, most of their fleets are going to be all electric, and some are promising that they're going to be using self-driving. The weight that these semiconductors have for probably one of the biggest base case growth drivers for the U.S. economy, automotive, it's really a big factor.
Okay, so what do you want to do about the judgments?
Well, Bill, I think we could take supply chain risk out of the U.S. for now, since they're moving so much out of China and moving to more stable economies.
So, Chris, here are the catalysts and the X factors. And what we think the really big deal is Modi and India. So both sides are really engaged in major attempts to maximize their geopolitical and geoeconomic alliances and minimize the other ones. But the core is India because of its population and also because of its geographical location. Chris, it's not going to be easy for Apple to move to India because in addition to 200 to 300,000 workers in iPhone City in Shenzhen, they also have the suppliers to Foxconn and also the suppliers to the suppliers and the suppliers to the suppliers to the suppliers. This is not going to be easy. And Apple really started to try and move its supply chain to India 7 years ago with minimal success. But it's a major objective to China. I mean, it's a major objective to Apple. A picture often tells 1,000 words. In this case, it's 1,000,000 words. And here are the new developments, which we're going to go over and refine. And just a quick view of just a quick view of the previous model. So what we're going to do, okay. So as usual, I'm going to send this video to the rest of our team, get all their comments, tomorrow and over the weekend, and be ready to do the what if modeling on Monday morning at our regular meeting at 10 o'clock.
Sounds good.